This week marks the biggest push from major employers to return to work since the start of the pandemic. As people head back to the office after working from home for just over 2 years, the Angus Reid Institute is putting out some new numbers based on a recent study. Here's what it found. Many don't want to go back. Some would even look for a new gig if they were asked to return to the office full time. For more on this, we welcome back to CB24 tonight Shachi Kurl, president of the Angus Reid Institute, and business coach Danny Stone. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Shachi, the findings are interesting. Based on this recent survey, more than half of those currently working from home say they'd look for a new job if they were asked to return to the office, and some would quit on the spot.
That's right. So we're ready to go back to the hockey game, but not necessarily back to the office, Lena. There are some reasons for this, and I think a lot of it has to do with work-life balance and just different quality of life measures. We talked to Canadians who've been working from home either some of the time, most of the time, or part-time since the pandemic began, and asked them a series of questions. You know, how's the productivity been? How connected do you feel to your colleagues? And then what's going on with your quality of life? Do you feel like you have good work-life balance? How's your mental health? How's your relationships with people, in your household? And almost every measure we canvassed on quality of life, we find people who are working from home more likely to say that their quality of life is actually pretty good relative to those who are not working from home. So you combine that with the fact that people genuinely feel, if they have been working from home, that their productivity has been either good or great. Nearly 80% of workers from home say that. And you have, perhaps not surprisingly then, a significant number, more than half, who either say, either I just go back if my employer gave me no flexibility and said I have to come back full-time, no exceptions, all the time. I'm either going to go back but start looking for another job, or I'm going to just quit and not come back.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And what's also interesting is, Shachi, there's been a shift in attitudes. A lot of Canadians working from home last summer, felt differently back then. They would have answered this question differently back then.
It's true. We've seen two things. First of all, fewer people are now working from home most of the time or some of the time than they were even last summer. So that gradual return to office has already been happening organically without the big employers saying, hey, you got to come back. But among those who are still working from home and prefer to work from home, they're becoming more entrenched in how they feel about this and feeling a little bit more like they can flex and say, hold on, I'm doing the work, the output is good. Why are you insisting that I go back to a life of commutes and waiting for transit or sitting in traffic and doing all of the things that I had to do in the before times?
Yeah, why are you asking me to do the job from the office when I can just do it from home? Danny, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us tonight. What do you make of some of these responses? Is it fair to say employees are calling the shots now a little bit?
Well, I don't know if they're calling the shots, but I think a lot of employees have been calling for more flexibility in the way that they work for many, many years. And I think the pandemic has really shown us that we have the ability to work from home, to be flexible in the way that we work, and still be productive in our work.
Yeah, you know, times are changing. Mindsets about the workplace are changing. I mean, the pandemic has really put things into perspective. How can businesses, employers, stay flexible?
Well, I think you can stay flexible by readjusting the way the hours that people work. It's no longer 8 to 4 or 9 to 5. Maybe it's in the evenings or on weekends. And the other thing that we have to be aware of is that we can take advantage of technology. One of the things that we realized over the pandemic is that we can work from home because of the access that we have to technology. And so employers can take advantage of those things to allow people to have more flexibility in the way that they work and have access to information through technology.
Shachi, a wave of Canadians we know quit their jobs, and a lot of people also lost their jobs. What did you find?
Yeah, we did find that this has been a time. We talk about the great resignation. I tend to think of it more as the great reorganization. There was a significant segment who either lost their jobs or lost hours in the work that they did. Others simply took the opportunity, if you want to call it that, perhaps not one that they were anticipating with the beginning of the pandemic, to retire early, to accelerate those plans. Or maybe it wasn't their choice, but they said, okay, here we are. This is what I'm going to do. What was really notable, Lena, was seeing the number of Canadians who also used the opportunity or the time to retrain. So while you do have the majority of Canadians saying, yes, I'm still in the job that I'm in, that I was in 2 years ago, among those who either left work voluntarily or involuntarily, took that time to upskill, to learn something new, to change jobs. And I think it also, so what that tells us is there's been a lot of movement. It hasn't been just people leaving the workforce or quitting a job. It's been taking their skills, either learning new skills or doing something else. So the amount of reorganization and movement happening under the surface, I think, is part of why we see, particularly with younger workers, Lena, saying, if the work doesn't work for me anymore, if the employment situation and the setup doesn't work for me, I'm going to take my skill set and go somewhere else. It's not just feeling the ability to flex and be emboldened among those younger workers. It's also, in some cases, that they've gone and received new skills and taken on new skills over the course of the last 2 years.
So you're saying younger workers are feeling more comfortable to say, no thanks, not for me, I'll walk away, I'll find something else, as opposed to older workers?
Yeah, there are some demographic divides in terms of these data. It's two things are really interesting. On one hand, older workers are much more likely, older or longer in the workplace or longer in their job, much more comfortable and happier working from home. Some of that's going to speak to where they are in their life, if they're looking after children or pets or spouses or other things. So they're quite content to be in their setup. The other thing that we find is that if you're an older worker, chances are your housing situation might be a little bit more comfortable. So you're not trying to cram into an apartment with 2 roommates and a lot of noise, and everyone's on a different Zoom or Teams or Slack in the interim, and it's very chaotic. Younger workers have not loved working from home as much as older workers. They also tend to feel more disconnected from both a learning and a work management perspective, and also just a social perspective. They miss their colleagues. But among those younger workers who do like working from home, they are much more likely to say, you know what, I'm out of here, relative to those who have been in their work for a while. Maybe there's a pension plan involved. Maybe there's benefits that they don't want to walk away from. So the whole, well, I'll quit tomorrow isn't maybe as much of an option for them.
Ah, okay. Danny, what stands out to you here?
I think what stands out is that people realize that we can have flexibility in the way that we work, and also really utilize the many different skills that you have. I think in the past, you applied for a job and you worked that job and you weren't able to utilize the other skills that you had. I think now we are realizing that we're multi-hyphenated individuals where we have lots of different skills and talents and abilities. And I think a lot of younger people in particular are looking for ways that they can utilize more of the skills that they have and more of the passions that they have within various organizations.
And we've been talking about this great resignation over the last couple of months. People are quitting. They have no problem doing that, walking away. Finding and retaining good talent, that's proving to be a challenge these days. It sounds like employees do have some negotiating power here. Danny, do you expect companies to take all of this into consideration?
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations are moving away from the traditional ways of recruiting where you needed a specific degree and a certain amount of years of experience to more around a skill-based approach. Do you have the skills, or can you develop the skills to do this job, as opposed to the traditional ways of recruiting? So I think they're going to see more flexibility around that and more flexibility around job design and how they design jobs from that moving forward.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Danny Stone and Shachi Kurl, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me, Lena.